This carburetor is actually in pretty good shape. I didn't find any gumming like I expected to find. There's some very mild corrosion. Everything indicates that the last time this was run, that the carburetor was drained out before it was put into long-term storage. So that's the good part about that. The float needle is kind of hard to tell, but looking at it here, the tip is pretty deteriorated, so it's good that I've got a new one of those in the kit. And since I've already got it apart and I bought the kit, I'm going to replace all of these jets, but yeah, they actually don't even look that bad. Of course, they could be blocked, and it's kind of hard to tell just by looking at them visually, but I don't see the usual gummy stuff that you find in the bottom of the bowl or coating these parts when you've got a carburetor that's had stale gas in it for a long time. I've removed the pilot air mixture screw. Generally what I do is I tighten it in all the way until it lightly seats, and I count the amount of turns that it takes to do that, so I know where it was set when I took it out, which was at 2.5 turns. So that's kind of what I would expect it. Oh, I'm sorry, 1.5 turns. Also, service manual usually will tell you a good starting point for where you want to start when you're starting the engine, and then of course you're going to fine-tune that. And then after you take this screw out, there's a spring down the side there, and also a little tiny O-ring, and you want to make sure you get all of those parts out, because if you forget that they're in there or don't realize they're in there and you're turning the carburetor over, they might fall out and be lost on you. That O-ring can be tough to get out, the one for the pilot air screw. The assembly order, when you're putting the parts back together, is pilot air screw, spring goes on there, this tiny washer, which you're going to be careful not to lose, goes on next, and then the O-ring goes on, and then that whole assembly goes down into the hole and gets screwed in. The O-ring tends to be stuck in the hole when you're trying to get it back out. Sometimes tapping it will make it fall out, but oftentimes what you got to do is you got to actually take a little thin piece of wire and stick it down there and make a tiny little hook on the end, and you can actually fish it out and pull it right out of this hole. So here's your assembly order right here of the new parts. Screw, spring slit on first, washer next, O-ring on the end, and then what you do is, well, what I like to do is I like to hold the carburetor actually right side up, so that I can put the screw in the bottom and get it started. I don't have to worry about the O-ring or anything falling off and getting out of position when I'm threading it in. As you take these these small jets out, it goes without saying that you want to hold them up to the light, make sure you can see right through them. They should be nice and clean, clear. If they're not, you need to run something through them to clean them. Some of the larger ones I'll use a pipe cleaner. Pipe cleaners aren't that popular anymore, but if you get a hold of a pack of them, they'll last you a long time for carburetor cleaning. And then also I have this set right here that I bought, which I like to use on my carburetors. This is actually for cleaning nozzles on torches. It has a whole bunch of different sized stiff wires, and you just want to make sure that you're gentle with it, and you don't try and stuff a wire in there that's too large for the hole, or be too vigorous in the cleaning process. But these work great. And you want to look for little tiny holes like these here. I don't know if you can even see these, but kind of hard to see it on the video, but there's some very tiny holes in this, and you want to make sure those are clean. But this carburetor, other than this light dusty residue that's on everything, it's very clean. So again, I'm going to replace the parts because I already bought the kit anyways and I've got it all apart, but I probably could have reused 99% of what's in here, other than for the small little rubber tip on the float needle valve is pretty deteriorated. So alrighty. Okay, after you've unscrewed this from the main jet area, you have to, from this side you can actually see the seat that sticks up, that actually this needle jet actually goes into, and the kit comes with a new one right here, so you want to replace that, and that just pops out. I need two hands, but tap it out, it should fall out, unless it's stuck in there, and then, well, you use your usual tricks to pop it out. bent piece of wire down there pushing on it will dislodge it. You have to make sure when you install this that this is facing the right way. This has got a smaller hole on this side and a larger hole on this side, and the larger hole is what's going to face up into the throat of the carburetor. So if I can explain that better, with the carburetor upside down like this, I take that new seat, and there's the larger hole side, smaller hole facing up, and the larger hole facing down in, just like that. And then you screw in that nozzle assembly. When replacing these two jets right here, which one of them is the main and the other one is right next to the main, your main goes in here and then the other one goes here. They're actually the same thread, so you can inadvertently get the two of them mixed up. So you want to make sure you notice which one is which when you're taking them out. But the other easy way to tell is that one has a much smaller hole than the other one. There's also a number that corresponds to the jet size. This small one is a 65 in this particular carburetor, and this large one is actually it's a 145. I'm sorry, a 148. A 148. And then on the kit came with a 65 and a 150. So it's just a tiny bit larger jet. And hey, that might just add to the performance. I'm not going to worry about it. So again, the smaller one, the 65, is not your main. It's the one that goes here. And then your, in this case, the 150 is going to go in here in the main. Just a quick correction, that's an 85. The smaller of the two jets here is an 85, and the replacement in the kit is also an 85. Alright, now I've inserted the new float needle. That actually just hangs on that little piece of metal, and then the float assembly gets placed in, and the float pin gets pushed through, and now that's all set to go. And then what you can do is you can hold it level and blow into the inlet line, and you should be able to feel resistance blocking the flow of the air that you're blowing in as you close the float, and that should be at about level. There is actually a more precise way to do this, but I've had good luck with just making sure that it's closing right at the point where this arm is level to this plane or the bowl. And now I've put a new gasket on the float bowl, cleaned out the float bowl, except for this, just a little bit of this light stuff on here, but that clean fuel with some fuel treatment will take care of that. Normally I would soak the whole carburetor and do it, fully clean it, but this carburetor was so lightly dirty that I don't even want to do that. Last thing I need to do is change this needle. And what I did was, when I was taking this cover off, I put an arrow, scratched an arrow on the top, and I put the arrow in the direction of the flow of air through the carburetor, so that arrow will be pointing towards the motor, so that when I take it apart I can see if this has to go in a certain way, and it sure does. There's a hole on this side that faces the engine. That hole is not present on this back side that faces the air filter, so I know this is going to go in that way. Then you also want to make sure the spring is good. The spring sits on the top here. Then there's this little spring guide piece that the needle sits in. The little plastic nubs face down. Then you take this out and we put the new one in. And then you want to make sure also that if this is adjustable, this little piece right here, on some carburetors you can actually move that piece up and down. That's an actual adjustment. You want to make sure your replacement one's set at the same height. On this one it's just set at the end, and it doesn't look like it's adjustable at all. Okay, I just put the carburetor in, got it all started up. Battery was dead, but I jump started it and I got it running, but then it started leaking around where the fuel shutoff hooks up to the tank. The fuel shutoff itself also seems to be leaking around the control knob area, so I'm going to take the old Arctic Cat one and salvage parts from it to fix this one. Yesterday I put fresh gas in the tank, reinstalled the recently rebuilt carburetor, cleaned out the mouse debris from the electrical area in the battery storage compartment, cleaned out the air box, found big mouse nest in the top. Didn't realize how deep the air box was. It's actually about a foot deep total, and that whole bottom area was actually filled with almost like a mud and debris, and even the intake, is the pipe down at the bottom there, actually comes up and around, and actually this is part of the piping right here, and then it goes up and loops around and comes up to right here. So this is your actual air intake. I guess the design is sort of a snorkel design, so you can submerge this thing, go pretty deep in the water before you start to suck water into the intake, which is kind of neat. But that was also clogged with a lot of debris, and worked the shop vac hose in and out, and was able to suck out all the stuff that was in there, clean that out. And then after I started it, even then, still some more stuff came out here. It looks to me like there might be a breather hose down there, a crankcase breather hose. It might be clogged, so I'm going to try and clean that out too. But the other problem was it started leaking gas almost right away at the fuel shutoff here. I was going to try and salvage parts from the old Arctic Cat shutoff, but then I remembered after looking at it that it's completely different, so I can't just take this plate off and replace the parts in there. And then I found out anyways that it turns out it wasn't actually, didn't look like it was leaking around here. It appeared to be leaking from around this control, but it was actually leaking where the joint is to the tank. So I took this apart and cleaned it and put it back together, and it still leaks. So the proper fix would be to replace this rubber strain-shaped O-ring that's in there, which I don't have one. Online it's about $3. Dealer doesn't have one. Don't really feel like ordering a $3 gasket and paying $8 to ship it. So then I started thinking about what I could use sealant. Regular Rtv sealant is not recommended for use where it's going to be submerged in gasoline. So in a previous video I actually used it to seal the float bowl gasket on the Arctic Cat's carburetor, and now in retrospect I realize that I shouldn't have done that, because blue Rtv is not good. Matter of fact, all the Rtv sealants actually aren't made for immersion in gasoline. The only sealant they have is they have an aviation product that you can buy at some auto parts stores that is rated for gas. Then I started thinking about how I had this thread sealant, this Teflon thread sealant. So I did a little research. Turns out there's a lot of controversy over whether or not Teflon tape is okay for gas lines. And I guess part of the problem is because a lot of Teflon tapes, or what people call Teflon tapes, actually don't even contain very much, if any, Teflon. Whereas this product, thread sealant with PTFE, definitely has Teflon in it. Permatex makes a product similar to this with PTFE that is rated for gasoline. So I'm going to take a chance and find out whether or not this will work in this particular application here. So I'm going to just put a light coat on, not too much, in case I have to go back and clean it off and put a new gasket on later.